All right, hello everyone, and today we're going to cover solving equations already in factored form. This should hopefully be a very easy lesson because most of the work is already done for you. So here we go. All right, so how to solve an equation in factored form. These steps right over here are the steps that we're going to use for any type of solving an equation by factoring. So a lot of these steps we're not going to use right now because of the fact that the work's already been done for you. Okay, so here we go. Let's start off. Step number 1 says to make sure one side of the problem is 0. So I look over here. Is one side of the equation equal to 0? The answer is yes. Step 2, factor. Now again, this is a very general statement because that could be GCF, that could be PS2, that could be a slide, that could be difference of squares. It could be any type of factoring method that you're aware of. Now in this case, because I have parentheses like this, it's already all set. Okay? So I don't have to factor anything. It's already been done for you. So step number 3 says pull the pieces apart. So what that means is we're going to just take these two, x plus 3, x minus 4. Just pull them away from each other. Set the pieces to 0, equals 0, equals 0. And the reason we do that because these all equaled 0 in the first place. And then solve the equations. So if x plus 3 is equal to 0, you'd minus the 3. So x equals negative 3. And again, x minus 4 equals 0, so you'd add the 4. So x is equal to 4. And you're done. There's your two solutions to this thing. Pretty simple. All right, let's go to the next example. Okay, so again, same direction, solve the equations in factored form. So step number 1, does one side equal 0? Yes, so we're good there. Step 2, factor. Well again, because it looks like this, I don't have any exponents in my parentheses, I can't factor. So step 2 is already done. So let's start. Step 3, pull the pieces apart. X minus 4, x plus 5. Set the pieces to 0, equals 0, equals 0. And solve. So here, we're going to add the 4 here. X is equal to 4. Here, minus the 5. X is equal to negative 5. And there's your solutions. Piece of cake, right? All right, let's move on. All right, next one. All right, now this one, a little bit of a trick in it because I have the square. Now remember, we're not going to make this x squared plus 64 because it has a minus sign in here. So what that means is we have to write this piece twice. Okay. And no, you do not need to multiply these. Keep it right like this. Because if I multiply it, then I have to factor it back down, and what's the point of doing that? All right, so step 1, does one side of this thing equal 0? Yup. Step 2, factor. Well, can I factor anything here? Do I have any exponents in the parenthesis? No, so I can't factor. All right, so let's pull the pieces apart. X minus 8, x minus 8. Set them to 0. And now solve the equation. So here, add 8. So x is equal to 8. And we already know that this is going to be the same thing. Now, depending on what your teacher says, some teachers say you only have to list, if I'm doing my solution set, some teachers say, if you say x is 8, you're perfectly fine. Other teachers will insist that you either write double root. Oops. Oh, hey. Some teachers are going to say you have to write either double root because the answer 8 appeared twice. Or they may say you have to use the initials DR indicating double root. So again, just know your teacher, know what they want for an answer with something like this. Okay? So, and that's that. So let's move on. All right, A little more complicated, but nothing too major. All right, so first things first. Does one side of the sink equal 0? Yes. Step 2, factor. We're looking in these parentheses. Do I have any exponents to factor? Nope. So we're all set there. So we go to step 3. We're going to pull the pieces apart. 2x plus 3, x minus 4. Set the pieces to 0. And now solve the equation. So here we're going to start by minusing the 3. 2x equals negative 3. And divide by 2. So x is negative 3 halves. Okay. Now coming to this one, I'm going to just add 4. Pretty simple. So x is equal to 4. Done. And there's your two solutions. All right, let's go to the next one. All right, now, here's where some math trickery and math wordage comes in that really is meant to fool you, but it's not as complicated. Again, remember, math people were tired of being bullied, picked on, spit at in high school, so they come up with weird garbage like this to confuse normal people, okay? But it's nothing really that major. It's not that confusing once you know what you're doing. So here we go. It says, solve the equation in factored form using the 0 function, or another way to say this is finding all the zeros. Okay? All the 0 function says to do is, again, you have function notation, f of x. Okay? What they're basically saying is use 0 function is to take f of x and turn it to 0. Okay? That's all f0 function says. It says take f of x, turn it to 0. And now you're following the same steps we just did a few minutes ago when we had 0 already over there. That's the only difference with this. Okay? So again, another way math people took something very simple and had to turn it into something very complicated. Okay? So now, does one side equal 0? Yup. Step 2, factor. So I look in these parentheses. Is there any exponents in here telling me I have to factor? No. So I can't do anything there. So now, whoops, kind of skipping ahead of myself. Sorry about that. So now let's pull the pieces apart. 4x minus 3, x minus 6. Set the pieces to 0. And now solve the equations. So here, add the 3. 4x is equal to 3. Divide by 4. So x is 3/4. Here, add 6. X is equal to 6. See? Nothing too drastically different. All they say to do is we're changing f of x to 0, and then you're doing what we've just done. It's pretty simple. All right, so another one. Okay, they're saying use the 0 function or find all the zeros. So again, first thing I'm going to do is I see f of x. I'm going to change that to 0. So I have this. All right, now start our steps. Does one side equal 0? Uh-huh. Step 2 says to factor. We're looking in the parentheses. Are there any exponents indicating I have to factor? The answer is no. So we can go to the next step. Pull the pieces apart. Set the pieces to 0. Solve what you got. So minus the 1 on this one. 3x equals negative 1. Divide by 3's. X is negative 1/3. Here, add the 5. So 2x is equal to 5. Divide by 2. So x is 5 halves. Okay, done. Piece of cake, easy stuff. And believe it or not, folks, on my tests on sections like this, these are the questions that are most commonly left blank because students don't know how to do them, which is so mind-boggling to me because everything's pretty much done for you. All right, so let's move on. All right, a little bit different. This one is not factored, but again, it's pretty easy to do. Now, make sure one side of the problem is 0. I don't have that here. But remember what needs to happen when we factor is the biggest piece, the lead coefficient, has to be positive. So since 4x squared, that's going to be my biggest piece because this is x squared and this is x to the first. Okay, that lead coefficient we want positive. So since it's already positive, it tells me I'm going to move the 2x over here. Now, in order to move it, remember, we're going to have to subtract it. So, 4x squared minus 2x equals to 0. All right, now, step 2, factor. So, I'm going to take out GCF. What do these pieces share? Between 4 and 2, I can kick out a multiple of 2. Okay. Between x squared and x, I have 2 x's here. I've got 1x here. So that means I can take out an x, leaving me 2x. Now 2x divided by 2x is 1. So we have this. All right, now pull the piece apart. 2x. 2x minus 1. Set the pieces 0. All right, I'll get you one in a second. And then we solve the equation. So divide by 2. Now 0 divided by 2 is 0. Here, add 1. Yeah, hold on. 2x is equal to 1. And divide by 2. So x is 1/2. All right, so the next one. All right, so let's take a look at this last one, okay? Now, here's one thing, okay? So step number 1 says make sure one side of the problem is 0. I don't have that here, okay? So we're not going to minus the 8 right now. Unfortunately, it was nice enough they did factor this for us, but we have to undo the factoring. Okay, so we're going to have to multiply that out either using FOIL, Toratak distribution, double distribution, whatever you call this. Okay, so let's start. So x times x, x squared. X times 4, 4x. 6 times x, 6x. And 6 times 4 is 24. Okay. Now I'm going to clean up. I'm going to combine my like terms here. So I'm going to have x squared plus 10x plus 24 is equal to 8. Now I'm going to start. I need to make sure one side's 0, so I'm going to minus the 8. X squared plus 10x plus 16 is equal to 0. Okay, now we're going to factor this. I'm going to use PS2 here. Product, positive 16. My sum is positive 10. So my two numbers that multiply to 16 but add to 10 are positive 8 and positive 2. Okay, so let me shrink that down. Yeah. And that was me when I was young, yeah. Okay, so we're going to have... Yeah. So we're going to have x plus 8. Yeah, x plus 2. Equals 0. Yep, those are oval picture frames. Very good. Not bad for somebody who's 2. Alright, oh, careful with that. That's glass. Yeah, no thank you. Let's not play with that. How about you eat your lunch? Alright, so now we factor, but again, I can't factor anything in here. There's no exponents. So pull the pieces apart. X plus 8, x plus 2. Set the pieces to 0. equals 0 equals 0. Now solve the equation. Minus the 8s. X is negative 8. Yeah, that's Dada. Yeah. Here, if x was 2 equals 0, minus the 2's. So x equals negative 2. And there you go. So just be careful with something like that. If this thing in the beginning doesn't equal 0, you have to multiply this out. Okay. Alright, so that's the end of this tutorial video. Hopefully you had a lot of fun, you learned a lot, and I will see you in the next lesson.